Welcome in, everyone. It's They Are Not From Philly podcast, Red October edition. We've been waiting all year to do this podcast, this episode especially, and we can't wait. As you can see, I've got Drew from Westchester with me today, a good friend of the show, and Justin from Tennessee. If you all know, he's going to be heading down to Philly. Today he's making the 9 to 10 hour drive. He told me yesterday, him and Owen. So they're going to be heading to the Eagles and Broncos game on Sunday, and they're going to be around the stateside Xfinity complex. So they might try and get tickets for the Phillies game if he can, but he'll be around there. So give Justin a holler, and I'm sure he'd love to speak to everyone that comes to see him and chat to him. And so Drew, welcome in. Happy birthday. It's not a bad weekend to have a birthday with Phillies Red October starting and the Eagles and the Broncos. So happy birthday, Drew, and thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it. Always great to talk to you. Yeah, man. Best time of the year. Birthday month, Red October. We got the Eagles in full swing. My son's birthday at the end of the month. Always great to talk with you. I feel like you guys need a little like theme music at the beginning, like maybe like an English and then like Southern mix or something.
Yeah,
like you and Justin. I don't have any producing chops, but I feel someone needs to do that. I feel like that'll be a distinct podcast intro.
I do. I'm still sort of like, because I'm like so new to this podcast thing. Even though we did it last year, I'm still figuring out all the kinks. So I do have a like an opening theme song that I got like this AI app to do, and I'll have to send it to you. Actually, it's really really good. My
Nice.
sister-in-law actually, like, she's a singer, and she loves like writing songs and stuff, and she like wrote some things and then she put it to an AI app, and it like created this song with music in the background, and it's really good. But I've tried to like add it on to the pod when I'm doing the editing before I put the show on YouTube, and it just doesn't come out like clean, and the sound isn't that great. So I've still got to figure out little kinks, but I'm hoping to get that figured out soon. But yeah, I'll send it to you later, because it's really good. It's quite a funny song.
We'll put a call out on Twitter. Someone help Adam and Justin get their intro music said.
If I was a rich man, I would love to get a producer, but I don't have that kind of money. But yeah, so yes, it's a big weekend, Drew. Red October has begun. Obviously, we're hoping this year that it's going to be a longer October than last year. Obviously, going into October last year, the Phillies were kind of in a not a cold streak, but they were getting cold. You could feel it. You could feel it was going to happen in the playoffs. You know what I mean? Like, we were excited, we were optimistic, but going into the playoffs last year, it just wasn't a great feeling, and we were one and done. The Mets, they came in, they took care of us handedly. We finished in Citi Field, and it wasn't a great feeling. And now, obviously, this year they decided to run it back. The trade deadline, Dave Dombrowski made some moves, and obviously at the time we weren't sort of all. We loved the Duran, get we got him. We knew he was a bona fide, closing pitcher. He was a stud. Harrison Bader at the time, I hold my hands up. We all thought he was just going to be an Austin Hayes type of, producer, not really going to contribute.
Austin Hayes.
Yeah. And so we thought, we don't really know. And Harrison Bader, he's been fantastic. You know what I mean? He gets hits, he gets RBIs, he's home runs. He's a fantastic centre fielder. I'm glad that they had the sense to rotate that outfield towards the end of the year, with Casti and Kepler and Marsh, and keep Harrison Bader as the everyday centre fielder, because it worked. He was producing. And it was better for Max Kepler and Nick Castellanos as well. If you know what I mean? Like, since Nick has had this rotating role, when he comes into a game now, he's producing better than he was, you know what I mean, being the everyday starting right fielder. Max Kepler too, because Max Kepler had a really bad cold streak. You know, everywhere, a lot
I
of
thought he was
us.
about to get DFA'd. I think we said
Yeah,
on a pod we thought he was going to get cut after the trade
yeah,
deadline.
everyone wanted him gone. Jack Fritz wanted him gone. You know what I mean? Philly sports talk. Everyone around Philly media and experts were like, Phillies have got to dish Max Kepler, but thankfully he's stepped back up to the plate and produced. So Drew, I'll ask you. We'll start with this. Let's look at, you know what I mean? It's been a fantastic year overall for the Phillies. NL East champions again. We've done it again. We finished well ahead of the Mets. The Mets didn't even make the playoffs. So we've done really well. The bullpen at times, there was a lot of worry over the bullpen, but I think the later half of the year they've got a lot better. Obviously, they're not perfect. It's not fantastic. But how do you feel, Drew, about obviously the likes of Matt Strahm, Ryan Kirkering, Tanner Banks has been fantastic this year. David Robertson has done okay since he's come back to the Phillies. Walker Buehler, we haven't really had much of a view on Walker Buehler yet. We haven't seen enough of him. I imagine he's just going to be in the bullpen during this playoff run. So how do you feel about the bullpen, Drew, about these guys? Because some guys have produced better than others. Others are starting to get a bit nervy, like Orion Kirkering. Matt Strahm's been about 50-50. So what's your take on the bullpen, Drew?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting, Adam, because even just to take a step back for a second, like you talk about kind of the feeling like last year compared to this year, and I feel like it's kind of like ironic and like October in a nutshell. Like this year's Dodgers team is much better than last year's Mets team. Like we're playing a much better team this year, but the vibes also just feel, so much better based around the Phillies and all. I think that I think whether we wanted to admit it or not, I think the Mets, were clearly in their heads, and my hope, and I think this can really be a thing, I think it will help them knowing that like the Mets and the Diamondbacks and some of their ghosts are not in this bracket, that they can see new teams and all. The bullpen, so I guess it's funny. I had some hope. I had some hope going into Tuesday, and the start of the wild card series. I was like, the Reds starting pitching is really good. They could push the Dodgers here. The Dodgers have lost when they've been the superior team before, and I see like Shohei hit a home run and Teoscar Hernandez hit a home run, and I'm like, okay, it's going to be the Dodgers. I'm going to start studying. I'm going to start studying for the Dodgers. And look, we can get into. We said the vibes are good. We can get into official. Well, I'm sure we'll do official like predictions and all later. A big thing that stood out to me when looking at the Dodgers lineup and thinking about our bullpen is, and I know, obviously, I know you were a big fan of this guy. I think Jose Alvarado just really hurt this team with what he with what he did, man. Like I think one of my biggest concerns right now is, as the series goes on and you get into those, late game, pockets, and you need, someone to get, to kind of go through, Shohei, Mookie Betts, like Freddie Freeman. I worry we're a lefty short there. I actually have a lot of trust in Matt Strahm. I also have a pretty good amount of trust in Tanner Banks. I think he could play a pivotal role in this series. I feel like you need one more guy there, and had Alvarado been available, look, I know he's volatile at times, but I think you would have that, and I worry, as the series goes on, as guys start, obviously the off days will help, but as guys start having to pitch on back-to-back nights and the teams feel out each other's bullpens a little bit more and guys get more exposed, that if we're looking back 8 days from now and things have not gone well, I feel like that could be a headline or things people have talked about. And I was kind of mapping out, look, the Phillies will announce their roster tomorrow in terms of who the 26 people are going to be. There's, they've had a lefty reliever for the past, I think month or two. I think they claimed him in like late August, Tim Miza, who's been, out of the
Yeah.
pen. And look, if he has to play a pivotal role, it's, either a problem or like a game's gone to like, extra innings where like
Yeah.
obviously he's not going to be one of your first calls out of the pen. But I would put him on the roster because I feel like you may need a third lefty in a tight
Yeah.
spot there. And I
Yeah.
guess to round it out, and then obviously I'll throw it back to you. In terms of like the righty guys in the pen, Kerkering is definitely big concern of mine. We've seen him come up short in the playoffs a couple times now, and I know he's young, but obviously, it feels to me if there's a potential weakness or Achilles heel that that could be it, and you just hope those guys can find it where it doesn't cost them a game where they cough up a lead late.
Yeah, I think obviously as well it wasn't intentional on his part obviously, but like the Zach Wheeler injury totally threw off their playoff rotation possible plans anyway. I think because obviously you look at Luzardo this year, he's had a fantastic year with the Phillies, but obviously there was these times where he was struggling to pitch out of the stretch. You know what I mean? The fourth, fifth inning, sixth inning is when he would really sort of struggle in some games. I know there's some games he fought his way back, but I think originally there might have been that plan to put Luzardo in the pen for the playoffs, possibly. Maybe after the NLDS, I'm not sure, but obviously the Zach Wheeler injury that has hurt us to a degree. Because obviously now we've got to go with three lefties. Christopher Sanchez, Luzardo, Ranger Suarez. Luzardo can't go in the pen now. And like you said, if Tim Mizer is having to come pitch in a situation, it might not be a good situation. And yeah, and I have to say, like going back to like Ohtani, like Matt Strahm has pitched really well against Ohtani this year. The games that we've beat the Dodgers in, I think Matt Strahm has pitched him a couple of times and he's struck him out. You know what I mean? And so he's done really well. Luzardo's done really well going up against Ohtani. But that's the thing, it's a real shame with Zach Wheeler. It's just an absolute gutter. But there we go. So say the first three games is going to be Sanchez, Luzardo, Ranger Suarez. Is Aaron Nola there for Game 4? Is he the starting pitcher? I can't see who else. You know what I mean? That they're going to. It's not going to be. We haven't seen enough of Walker Buehler to put that trust. How you feel on Aaron Nola? Because I'm sort of at the point where when he comes to the mound, it's like Taiwan Walker. I just like have that dread of like, oh my god, what? I know Nola's last start was fantastic, like 10 strikeouts, pitched 8 innings, was really great. But he struggled all year. I know he was injured in between, but yeah. What's your feeling on Aaron Nola?
Yeah, so I think I'm more optimistic on Nola than you are. We'll see if that's just me trying to talk myself into it or not. But I guess what I would do here is, so obviously we know Sanchez is going to start game 1. What we don't know is how healthy is Ranger Suarez. I assume he's fine with the comebacker that he took off the thigh or whatnot, but obviously I think Topper was a little vague this week. If I was look, there's arguments to both sides of the equation, because on one hand you can say throw Luzardo in game 2 and he'll feed off like the home crowd and all, which I get. If it were up to me and Ranger was healthy, I would go Sanchez 1. I would go Ranger in game 2, because I think if this gets back to game 5, I'd rather have Ranger on the mound in game 5, who I know has the playoff experience and who's done this before, than Luzardo. And that's not a knock necessarily against Luzardo. It's more a compliment to Ranger. I also, and look, I don't know if pitchers value this or not. About 3 weeks ago, Luzardo pitched at, Dodger Stadium, and he gave up a couple runs, but he pitched pretty well. So he's recently been on the mound out there. He has that
Yeah, true.
familiarity. So if it were up to me, I would go obviously, Sanchi, Ranger in game 2, Luzardo in game 3. Then the way the off days set up, it would allow you to have Sanchez come back on normal rest in game 4 on Thursday night. There'd be a 4-day gap in between, and then it would set you up to, if there was a game 5, to have then Ranger on normal rest again. So I think so I say I have trust in Aaron Nola, but I think the concern is if Ranger is healthy and Topper goes to Nola before he has to, I think that would be a little like overthinking and all. Like, to me, it's, if everyone's healthy, it's Sanchi, it's Ranger, it's Luzardo, and then you go back to that well, and then Nola is more of a factor in the NLCS, and Walker Buehler to me is Swiss Army knife guy. Like, we could see, if we could see Buehler in the 7th inning of game 1. If you need someone to come in and get Mookie Betts out, we could see him again in game 2. To me, I'm telling him, you're gonna be ready to go every night, and one night it might be the 7th inning, one night it might be the 4th inning. Hopefully not the 4th inning, because that probably means something went wrong with the starter. But that's his role to me, where he's kind of your like utility player out of the bullpen there.
The good thing, with Walker Buehler is that he pitched for the Dodgers in the World Series. He won the World Series with them. So he's obviously pitched to these guys. He's experienced. And it seemed. Yeah, I don't know if he started for the Dodgers. I can't remember if he started any games.
I believe he did, and I know he closed out the final game of the World Series, and that's not obviously they were up 3-1. They had some wiggle room, but that's not up a run in Yankee Stadium trying to close out the World Series. That's not an easy assignment. So obviously that's only one time, but I feel like his stuff can play pretty well out of a pen, where to me I have more trust in him out of the pen than I do Kerkering right now. People might be split there, but I'm probably more down on Kerkering I'm probably lower on Kerkering than a lot of people, and I'm probably higher on Nola than a lot of folks, and maybe Buehler too.
That is bad, because I think a lot of people feel how you feel, and I think a lot of people sort of feel how I feel. It's very split down the middle with Nola and Kerkering, But that's the thing with Kerkering. He's sort of struggled in those big moments, and there's been some big moments this year where he's sort of struggled. There's been some moments where he hasn't, but it's been tough. So let's talk about, obviously, Duran. He was the big acquisition. He's going to play a big part, to try and close out this series. Now, the only home runs he's given up this year for the Phillies, I think it was from Minnesota as well, is against the Dodgers at Dodger Stadium. I think it was 2 or 3 home runs he's possibly given up, and it was against the Dodgers. So that's a sort of worrying concern, and he's looked a bit spotty the last couple of weeks towards the end of the year. So how do you feel about Duran? Do you think he will be able to, meet those moments as the bona fide closer? You know what I mean? Like, Citizens Bank Park is going to be going nuts when his entrance comes on, and the Undertaker gong, and you know what I mean? It's going to be crazy. Do you think he's going to be able to meet the moment? And when, if it's like Freddie Freeman and Otani, those batters coming up in the 9th inning. You know what I mean? Obviously, you don't know how the things work, but do you think he's going to be able to meet the moment?
You know what? That's an incredible stat that his only home runs have been allowed to the Dodgers this
Yeah,
year. I started trying to get more into the specifics there when you said that, because
yeah,
I was just so curious. I'm like, wow, that is that that is crazy. And I think you honestly kind of played into my point there. So I feel very good about Duran at without even knowing the stat, kind of set up what I would have said there. I feel very good about Duran at CBP.
mm,
And I'll be honest. Like, I think I'm going to the game tomorrow. Like, as much as you just want to make it like low stress and just like chase Shohei and win the game 10-1. Like,
yeah,
I need the Duran intro. Like, like 9:30
yeah,
p.m. Like, the lights go down. The Phils are holding like a 2-run. Let's give them a 2-run lead, so it's a little less stressful. Maybe a solo
yeah,
shot can't tie it. And like, you see like Hell's Bells and the Tarantula crawling. Like, I need the Duran intro tomorrow. But yeah, where I do worry about him is if he gets into a tight spot in Dodger Stadium, where don't have the friendly support of CBP
mm,
and all. Now, to his credit, and I don't remember the specific situations in games, but I know I know stat wise, I think pitched like 5 innings in the playoffs in 2023 for the Twins, and was like very smooth, like no runs.
mm,
I think very few like base runners on. He pitched a couple times in Houston to a good Astros team who was coming off the World Series, where that's not an easy place to pitch.
yeah,
So ultimately, I think Duran will be fine. My trust in him is probably like, let's say, like a 9.3 out of 10. I'll put it this way: if we're looking back, and I feel like I keep going to this line, but if we're looking back into a week from now and things have not gone according to plan, I
yeah.
don't think it will be Duran's fault. I think other
No.
people need to do their job to get the game to him. If the Phillies get the game to him in a save situation, I am confident that he will get the 3 or more
Yeah.
outs to get the
Oh
save.
yeah, 100%. I mean, we saw that just from his first, 3 or 4 games that he did come in and close out games, and he was just absolutely fantastic. Just seeing those 100 mile per hour fastballs, his splitter, I think it was like nearly 90 miles per hour, something like that. Yeah, it was just insane weaponry that he has at his disposal, So, but like you said, going back then, if we're looking back in a week's time and it hasn't gone our way, like you said, I don't think it would be Duran. So, go on that note. Obviously, the problem has been the last few years, which is I spoke about it all year. My biggest concern is going into watching that very first game tomorrow. I'm going to be sitting there 11:30 p.m. at night over here in the UK. It's very late. I'm going to be up till possibly 2 a.m. something like that. And a lot of
Then
British
you got the
Phillies
Eagles like 12 hours later. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the good thing with the Eagles game is that it's on at 6 p.m. in the UK, which is
Okay.
1
So
p.m.
that's a
for you
normal
guys.
time.
Yeah, so it's a great time. The kids are going to bed, and then I can sit down, relax, watch the game. Well, I say relax. We get into the Eagles towards the end. Nothing's relaxing at the moment watching them, but yeah. So I think the main issue would be if we lose this series, if Red October comes to a screeching halt like it did last year, it'll be the bats. And I hate, being one of those guys who's like, oh, he's on about the bats being cold again. But that's been the biggest problem of us losing the World Series. It was a no-hitter against Houston. We had everything in the bag to come back to Philly to take care of the Diamondbacks, and we went cold. And then last year, it was just cold against the Mets. We won that one game, and that was that was a comeback win. You know what I mean? And it was the bats that was the issue. And there's been times throughout the year where obviously people have called for Kevin Long to be fired. What is he doing as a hitting coach? What is he showing them? What is he coaching them? Can these guys be coached? Because most of the starting lineup are veterans. Trey Turner's a World Series champion. Kyle Schwarber's a World Series champion. Bryce Harper's, multiple time MVP. He's been in the league a long time. Nick Castellanos has been around a long time. So, the problem has been, but like you said at the beginning, the vibes this year have changed completely to what they were last year going into the playoffs. Harrison Bader has been a fantastic sort of pickup. We all doubted it, but he's not only brought that play onto the field, he's brought the vibes into the clubhouse. He's been fantastic. The bats have got hot since he's came into this lineup. His bat has been hot. So, do you think I'm dreading watching this first game tomorrow. I'm nervous already. I'm excited. I can't wait to first pitch. But do you think the bats are going to be the issue, Drew? Like, how are you feeling about Trey Turner's back in the lineup? He's leading off. So Alec Bohm has looked good since he's come back from his injury. He's hitting. He's getting hits. So fair play to Alec Bohm. How do you feel about the hitting and the lineup? And what's your sort of view on things?
Yeah, so because to your point about Bader, because of him, I feel like I feel better, than I did last year. And he obviously, I don't think he was playing every day, but he was on that Nets team last year, so he kind of saw it from the other from the other side a bit. There's a couple. There's a couple of things here. I think my biggest fear as it pertains to game one right now is, look, obviously I think everyone has a lot of trust in Christopher Sanchez. He hasn't been amazing against the Dodgers this year. Do I think he will be good tomorrow? Yes, I do. But I guess what my biggest concern is, we can talk about vibes, and they can say in interviews and press conferences that things are different and all. My biggest concern is, say, they're down 1-0 in the fifth inning. Let's say we've only had like a base runner or two, and that stadium gets tight, and and they get tight. And I feel like sometimes, we know this to be a fact, like in like life or whatever, when you're trying to develop a new habit, or you're trying to, fix like mechanics or do something differently, when things start, when you're not seeing results right away, or, things start, you feeling like, heat and like the stress a little bit, you kind of like old habits can die hard. So that's one of my biggest concerns, that they, start chasing, kind of giving Shohei some easy, outs to extend his runway, to, prevent from trying to get into that, Dodgers bullpen. That's pretty questionable. I think something that's really interesting, Adam, and I would not have expected this until I just started doing some research a couple days ago. So obviously the Dodgers pitching, overall, I would say is pretty good. Like, we think the bullpen might be a weak spot, but like, those starters are good. We would say their pitching is really good. I was really surprised when I saw this. And look, I don't know how much of it is the starters, how much of it is the pen. I haven't broken that down, but their pitching staff issued the fifth most walks this year. Like,
wow.
The Colorado Rockies, who won like 45 games and were absolutely horrible, walked less opponents than the Dodgers pitchers did. So, which is just kind of crazy when you put it in that perspective. So to me, I need guys going up there. I need guys going up there being patient, and basically, like, be the good version of Bryson Stott. Foul stuff off, get ahead in counts, and really, I need, Topper and Kevin Long emphasizing, like, look, obviously we know they're going to have to hit home runs to win 11 games and win the World Series. Like, that's home runs are important in October, but I need them emphasizing just like, hey, like, a walk is as good as a hit. A walk is as good as a single. Just get on base, pass the baton in the early going, and work that pitch count, and get Shohei out of there. And I'll just, you brought up Trey Turner a little bit too. The last thing I would say on that topic is I don't know. The Dodgers have a catcher by the name of ironically Will Smith, who's
Yeah.
very good catcher. I know he's been banged up where he didn't start in the wild card series. I've heard he might be available. Might play in the Phillies series. I'm not positive, but and look, I'm not a doctor, but I believe I read that he was dealing with like some like hairline fracture on like his like throwing wrist or something. And I don't
Oh,
know
yeah,
what.
that's
Look,
tough.
I don't know what that means. But if he's in the lineup, if he's in play, if he's somehow catching and Trey, and he is a very good defensive catcher when healthy. But I'm trying to test that right away. Like if Trey walks or Trey singles to lead off the bottom of the first, like who's the first base coach? Like Paco Figueroa. Like you're running, man. Like you're going first
Yeah.
or second pitch, and we're gonna see if Smith can control this running game. So
Yeah. It'd be good to test the
yeah.
hamstring as well, you know? Got to test
Yeah,
that ham.
like let's just turn it loose and see. Let's just turn it loose and see what we have here.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's going to be very interesting. So as far as like the outfield rotation, obviously it's worked much better since they started rotating that outfield. You know what I mean? They've had Harrison Bader, the last half of the season be locked in as the more or less everyday starting centre fielder. Brandon Marsh and Max Kepler rotated with Casti. You know, Max Kepler's gone to right. Brandon Marsh will go in left field. As far as like obviously we don't know the starting lineup for until tomorrow, but what do you think Rob Thompson does with the outfield? Do you think he is Kepler, Bader, and Castellanos, or do you think Kepler goes to right field and Marsh is the starting left fielder?
Yeah, so I think you're bringing up a great larger point to it. I think Topper's going to play a pivotal role in this series because I feel like,
Oh yeah,
like we've had a couple platoons before, but it feels, just like kind of more this year where it's less of a set it and forget it lineup.
yeah,
So my educated assumption based on facing Shohei tomorrow is I think you'll see obviously Bader in center. I think he'll be there. The whole time. I think you will see Marsh and Kepler on the corners. And then game 2 is where it gets interesting because game 2 you're going to face Blake Snell, who's a tough lefty. So I think
yes, yeah,
that will be a spot where you'll see that'll be a spot where Castellanos will play in game 2. And then the kind of question there is who's your other kind of like final bat in that game? Like, is it if Marshall Kepler has a good game 1, do you stick with one of them? Is it Weston Wilson? Is it Otto Kemp? I would my gut, and that's a really big mystery to me right now. My gut says it might be Weston Wilson, which I don't feel great about. And I think once Snell's out of the game, that's when you see kind of like the merry-go-round start going, where you
yeah,
could see Marsh or Kepler come in. But yeah, it's a and then I think another interesting thing there is if I'm as good as we've seen, Stott kind of turn it on down the stretch. If I'm Topper in game 2, obviously we have to get through game 1, but I'm starting Sosa against Snell, see if maybe he can, provide some energy top 1 instead of, over Bryson Stott. But I
yeah.
imagine Stott will, come into the game, once the Dodgers are into their bullpen and Snell's out. So he's got a lot of interesting, things beyond just even who I start. It's like, when do I deploy my bench in terms of pinch hitting? Do I have to have kind of balance? Okay, do I need offense here? But, if I put Castellanos in the game for Kepler right now to pinch hit, am I sacrificing defense later? So, yeah, Topper's got a lot on his plate here.
Yeah, this is a year where I mean, obviously the playoffs are obviously a big spotlight for every manager. You, you know, I questioned Rob Thompson a lot during the year over his times of like where when there's been questionable calls from the umpires and stuff in tight games, and he hasn't reacted, maybe the way we wanted him to react. You know what I mean? You'll have like, Bryce, there'll be a fourth pitch called on Bryce Harper as a strike instead of a walk, and he's looking over to the dugout, and like, no, Rob Thompson is not reacting. You see the players reacting, but you don't see, your coach reacting to come and step in and just have a word with the umpires. So there's obviously going to be a lot of scrutiny on Rob Thompson this year and how he manages this October, because I don't think I think his job is safe. Obviously, he's just won the National League East title again for second year in a row. He's taken them to October. I don't think they've got like concerns of it's maybe time to let Rob Thompson go. That'll obviously be a question for next year. But he's got as much as the bats and obviously the pitching and the bullpen and it is all important to team performance, his decisions in games are going to be very, very important. You know what I mean? Especially in terms of just keeping these guys, keeping the morale. Obviously, he's good vibes going into this October, better than last year. But he's got to keep being in his position. Must be so, like Nick Sirianni, being these big time coaches at this level. The pressure must be. I know, like, when they go on camera, they talk about, like, it's not pressure, it's just playing baseball, it's just playing football, this and that. But, like, they've got to be sitting in their offices just like, poof, you know what I mean? Like, this is on us. Rob Thompson, his team, then his guys, they're going to be sitting there and going, right, what can we do to, make this work this year? You know what I mean? We've got to. So it's going to be some big time moments for Rob Thompson to really sort of like react and make key decisions to help us win these games and get to the end of October. It's crazy. So before we move on to the Eagles, what's your three? Last week I started something new with Justin. We do like these 3 keys to victory. So I'll ask you, what do you think this week, Drew, is the 3 keys for the Phillies to overcome the Dodgers, overcome Shohei Ohtani. Shohei Ohtani is like this, he's this big figure in baseball. He's sort of the face of baseball. You know what I mean? In certain regards, he's come back pitching. He's looked good since he's come back pitching this year, but obviously he hasn't done it. He's done it in the later stage of the season, so that might be good for the Phillies. I know the last time he played the Phillies a couple of weeks ago, he had the 5 innings no hitter, but he's lost that sort of like, it's obviously, he's done pitching all his life, all his career, and he's done a fantastic pitcher. But you know what I mean? It's because he's had to go back to it later in the season. Maybe there'll be a little bit of rust. I don't know. And again, he's a World Series champion. Who knows? But what is your 3 keys, Drew, to the Phillies overcoming the Dodgers? The Dodgers are World Series champions. They're defending the title.
Man, you're putting me on the spot here. I love it. I started writing down a couple things here. I think so. I think an interesting thing on Shohei, and then I'll get right into that, is he is this is going to be his first time pitching in the playoffs. And I mean, obviously he jumps out as a guy to us who we think can meet the moment. Like, obviously he's played in massive games before, but sometimes that first time pitching for someone, like some people, like a couple of years ago, like Zach Wheeler was totally fine, but sometimes, people sometimes that can get to people. His ERA is a couple points higher on the road than it is at home. He's got like a 1.12 ERA at home. It's 3.8 on the road, so still respectable. But I think there's a chance the Phils can get to him tomorrow. My 3 keys are 1, protect the bank. If the Phillies go up 2-0, like, they will win the series. It might take the Dodgers might hold serve at home. It might take 5 games, but they won't. I'm confident they won't lose 3 in a row. I think as much as obviously you want to have home field advantage in a short series, I do feel like sometimes it's a little scary to open at home, because you drop that first game, or you drop one of those games, and it can flip really quickly. I mean, we saw it, and that's how the Phillies won in 22 and 23. They split with the Braves and then came home and did it. So you gotta protect the bank and find a way. I think if you like simulated this 100 times, probably the most common outcome is it's going to be 1-1 after 2. You got to find a way to win both of those games at the bank. I would say key number 2 is we talked about it a few minutes ago, just like patience. Like walks are your friend, grind at bats. I don't totally you have to produce too. You can't just work the pitch count and be losing by a couple runs and expect to get into the bullpen and automatically turn it on. Ideally, those walks and those patience lead to runs, but I think avoid the chasing, avoid those old bad habits, get those Dodgers starters out after 5 innings versus 6 or 7. Like if you want to break it down math wise, I think the most pitches Shohei has thrown in a start this season, I think, is 91, and a lot of them were a little lower than that. So let's say like 18, 19 pitches an inning can get him out by after the 5th inning, where ideally you've gotten a couple across the plate and you start getting into that Dodgers pen. And then I'd say third and final key is Bryce being Bryce, and Bryce has to be October Bryce. I brought this up. I was able to get a call into the morning show on WIP today, and I just said, like, if I'm look, we don't know Bryce personally. We don't know what motivates Bryce, but if I'm him, I'm looking around, and there's a lot of guys in this series on the Dodgers and the Phillies, like Shohei, Freddie Freeman, Mookie, and then but not just that, its own teammates too, like Kyle Schwarber with the Cubs, like Trey with the Nationals. Like all these guys have rings, and if I'm him, like I'm thinking like I was the king before any of these guys. I need my ring, I deserve my ring, and I'm going to do everything. And look, he can't do it alone. Obviously, it's going to take 26 guys, but I think if Bryce is Bryce, if he can do what he did against, say like the Padres in 2022 or the Braves in 2023, then the Phillies will win the series.
Yeah, definitely. Bryce, it's do or die time for these older guys, these veterans. You know what I mean? Obviously, we've still got a long time left with Trey Turner and Bryce Harper. And, hopefully we can get Schwarber re-signed in the off-season. I think they'll do it. I think, how can you not re-sign that guy after the year he's had? You know what I mean? He nearly broke Ryan Howard's record. You know what I mean? So it's a last-ditch, like a final run, as Jack has put it out there, is burn the boat. You know what I mean? Just don't leave no stone unturned. Yeah. It's fantastic, fantastic thing that he did with that.
Yeah, and I think the scary, like a scary thing, Adam, is, and look, if we want to do official predictions, like do I think the Phillies are going to win the series? Like, yes, I do. But you brought up like when you talk about Topper, you brought up like Nick Sirianni. I think a scary thing for a lot of people is going to be like, there's a world where they could play a great series and one mistake costs you. Like you look at Jalen in the first like Chiefs Super Bowl, like balled out, played the game of his life, one mistake, and somehow at the end you're on like the wrong side of the score. And I think that's kind of the scary thing about going up against LA versus some of these other teams. That's why I was pushing for them to really push for that 1 seed, because I thought the other side of the bracket with like Cubs, Padres, Brewers was a little bit easier of a road. But you know what, it feels like the Phillies and the Dodgers have kind of like been just missing each other for the past couple years, where they've been on like a 4-year collision course, and now it's here and it's go time, and they gotta show up and figure out, it's I'd be shocked if it was a sweep. It's not going to be easy, but they got to figure out how to get to 3 games before the Dodgers do and keep this going.
Definitely. I mean, I've seen some things online that some of these big analysts and stuff are looking at the Phillies and the Dodgers as if like, this is the World Series. You know what I'm saying? Like it's such a like clash of the Titans. You know what I mean? It's such a big match. I mean, like you said, we've just missed each other the last few years. We've had series against each other and stuff, but in these big moments, they haven't played each other. So it is going to be a massive moment to meet them. The likes of Bryce, Trey, Kyle Schwarber, JT is going to have to step it up. You know what I mean? All these guys.
I think he's a big X factor, JT. Yeah.
And he's definitely. I know it's been an up and down year for JT Realmuto, but I do still have some faith in him. You know what I mean? To meet those moments. You know what I mean? He's still got a great. When JT Realmuto hits a home run, it's the same sort of. He hits it the same way every time. He just absolutely cracks it off the bat, and it just goes out. There's no chance of anyone getting it. It's just fantastic. But yeah, so it's going to be a great series. I can't wait till tomorrow. I'm nervous about tomorrow. It's going to be a nerve-wracking week for everyone in around the world and for all the Phillies fans in Philadelphia. But yeah, so we got some time left, Drew. Obviously, I want to touch on the Eagles really quick. Last week that was
never boring.
That was a really strange game. I mean, I was sitting there in that first half thinking, I just wasn't expecting them to be rolling over on the Buccaneers the way they were. You know what I mean? Everything was clicking. You know what I mean? The play calling was nice and balanced, and Jalen was good again, and they were. It seemed like they were going to overcome the factor of the heat and the blitz. They were combating the blitz really well, and then that second half, it was just like it. It was like watching the 2020 version of the Eagles. You know what I mean? It was just nothing could get going. They went back to the stagnant play calling, trying to run it up the gut with Saquon Barkley and the offensive line, and just wasn't working. Jalen was being forced to check the ball down, and I think it was a crazy stat that I saw. I think Jalen was like 0 and 8 passes completed or something in the second half. I think he only completed 2 passes, maybe something. It was a really strange game. The defense started to struggle, but I think that was due to like the heat and exhaustion, and they just couldn't get.
I think
they couldn't
a couple
get to the
fluke
quarterback.
Plays there too. The Abuka big play that Reed and Makuba missed.
Yeah, he gave up another couple of big plays, which we're not used to seeing this defense do. Yeah. But it seems to be happening. It happened in the Rams game the week before. They gave up 2 big plays. Happened against the Chiefs. They gave up 2 big plays. And now obviously all this stuff is back out there again now with AJ Brown and Jalen, and it's been talked about all week on every radio station, every podcast, and now we are talking about it on this podcast. And it's just, I don't think the AJ Brown stuff is ever going to go away until he's retired. I think it's going to be something every year that sort of gets AJ going. When you think about it, he's very open about his mental health struggles and stuff that he's had in the past. And I think just for him, it helps him to obviously just vent and get that out there, how he's feeling. Does he always do it at the right time, straight after a game? He's probably not the best time to put those type of things out there. But, how he is as a guy and as a player, he just feels, I think, he needs to vent it out. You know what I mean? But obviously there's times. And so what do you think? Everyone's talking about trading AJ Brown in the off. When the season ends, they can trade AJ Brown. If they trade him in season, it's like a 90 million dead cap hit. They're not going to be stupid to make that mistake again, because they had to do something similar like that with Carson Wentz. If you remember, we had to eat some dead cap money, and it wasn't great. So what's your take on all this stuff with AJ Brown, Drew? Because obviously, they were trying to force the ball to him last week in that second half. Like I was saying in our chat, why are they forcing it to AJ? It's not working. You've got all these other guys. You've got Dallas, Saquon, John Mechie, Dotson. You've got Devontae Smith. Why are they not spreading? Why are they not doing what they did in the first half? Why do you think they were so adamant on trying to force the ball to AJ Brown in that second half?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like they're a 4-0 football team, and it feels like every game this year, like you kind of look up at the end, and in its own way, it's like, what just happened? Like every game has just been, super weird. one way or another.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a couple of things there. I think you, and look, I'm not going to just excuse it away. I think you give, to Todd Bowles some credit for halftime adjustments. Obviously, he's, a very
Yeah, of
bright
course.
defensive mind. I actually, give a lot of credit to Kevin Patullo in that, he came out with a good, first half game plan and was really
Yeah.
humming there. I feel like I've maybe been a little more like protective of Patullo than others, which is kind of ironic because I actually, would have liked to go outside for the hire. But in terms of, I think he deserves some time there. In terms of AJ, I think it's a shame because if you remember, were you watching did you have like a live feed of the parade last year? Were you
Yeah.
watching like the speeches
Yeah.
on parade
Yeah.
day and all? Okay, cool. So I thought AJ far and away had like the best speech, and I just thought that was like such a cool moment for him when he
Oh,
had
it
kind of
was.
like
Yeah, it was
kept the
fantastic.
receipts. Yup, and he just like went at it, and he's like, "Hey, like they said I was a diva. They said all I care about is stats. Well, if you're gonna get all those things wrong about me, there's one thing you can get right. I'm a
I'm a
bleeping
champion.
champion." And
Yeah.
I thought it was like
Yeah.
I thought it was the best outside of just like Chauncey, just like being Chauncey and just like cursing and then saying
Yeah.
respectfully every other word. I thought AJ's speech was like from the heart and like far and away the best.
Yeah.
And I think it's a shame because when you then put this stuff out there, it's almost like you're diminishing your own words. Like you're saying they said I was a diva, but then you're kind of coming across
As a
you're
yeah.
coming across like a diva.
Yeah.
Where I I I don't I don't know. I want them to. It just feels a little bit. It just feels a little bit like Boy Who Cried. It's starting to feel a little bit like Boy Who Cried like wolf to me, where
Wolf. Yeah.
he'll put something out and it's like, okay, like I'm upset, and then it's like, okay, well then he'll talk a couple days later and it's like, no, like everything's all right, like I'm actually not upset, and then the cycle just kind of repeats, and it's
Yeah.
like,
It's
and
just
it's like,
repeating itself
all
every
right,
year.
man, just like how do you just how do you really feel about this? Like, do you want to do you want to do you want to be a part of a winning do you want to be a part of a winning team, or do you want to go catch like 120 balls in like Carolina from every season, but then probably in a big spot have Bryce Young overthrow you and go like 5-12 kind
Yeah.
of thing? Like, what do you want? And look,
Yeah.
I like AJ. I'm not, I'm more pro AJ. I want to be even
Oh,
more pro AJ than I
100%.
am.
Yeah.
But I will say, I don't, Devontae is my favorite current Eagle, and it does
Yeah.
make me, really appreciate Devontae in that, I'm sure he's frustrated. His numbers have been down so far too this season to no real fault of his. And, you don't see him, doing
No.
a lot of this stuff post game. So,
Yeah.
look, they're probably it could be the Steelers game from last year. I think they're gonna win on Sunday, and everything. The temperature's probably gonna get cooler, but it's just like I'm getting a little sick of going through this every
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 year.
year. Like, it was the same
Yeah.
thing in like 2023 with the Vikings game where you're up like 27-7, but he's like upset on the sideline, and it's like, okay, man,
Yeah.
like it's a short week. It's week 2. A lot of people are hurt. We're just trying to get through the game and
Yeah.
win the game. And just like, yeah, I think it's like what do you want? What do you want out of this relationship? Do you want to be here, or do you, or do you not? Where it'd be ideal if we could just stop going through this same controversy year after
Yeah.
year.
It is frustrating, and obviously I think if AJ Brown was like traded tomorrow, we'd all be devastated as a fan base, because I think
Oh,
this team.
it'd be terrible, and the Super Bowl
Yeah.
hopes would definitely take a hit. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think the Super Bowl hopes would be gone completely. You know what I mean? And that's not the thing on Jalen Hurts and Devontae and the rest of the team. But AJ, we have such a better winning percentage with AJ Brown than we do without him. You know, he plays a pivotal part on this team. You know, everything changed for this team when they traded for AJ Brown. You know what I mean? That was the fire that Howie Roseman lit when he traded for AJ Brown that night, and it got everyone back on side, excited, and then we saw it on the field for that amazing 2022 run. And so yeah, it's just frustrating. I think it's just who he is. Who he is. He's always going to express that, and I think there is some sort of fracture there between him and Jalen Hurts. I don't know what happened along the line. It obviously happened during the 2023 season when everything sort of collapsed. But it wasn't just about them. There was so many other factors, the defense and all that. So there is a fracture there. I don't think they're as close as they used to be. I think they are still friends and what have you, and they are close because you saw clips on the sideline when they were about to win the Super Bowl, and you saw Jalen talking to Devontae, so Jalen talking to AJ, and he was like, "This is why I brought you here. This is why I want you here because so we could win together and we could, you know what I mean." So there is still that friendship there. I just think it's a little bit fractured. It's more of a working relationship, and they get their wires crossed sometimes. I don't know, but it's never going to be as bad as like the Donovan and T.O. thing. You know what I mean? I don't think it's ever going to get to that stage, wherever, but yeah, so obviously the Broncos game now, I don't know if that's going to be the game where they'll be able to like give AJ Brown a 200-yard game. You know what I mean? Because the Broncos defense has been quite good this year. They've got 15 sacks. The Eagles have only got 5 sacks. They've got a good young defense. Patrick Surtain, he's a good quarterback. He's going to be, he's either going to be following AJ, or he's going to be following Devontae. So it's going to be some tough matchups. So I don't know if this is the game where they're going to try and force it to AJ, or get in that yards to keep him onside. I think that will be more of the Giants and the Vikings games. You know what I mean? We've got the Giants and the Vikings and the Giants, and then it's the bye week, I think. So I think they'll get it sorted and corrected by then. I think we'll be in a much better spot, hopefully. But I think those are the games will be to get AJ those yards and keep everything ticking. But so how do you feel going into this Broncos game, Drew? Like you said, obviously we've got high hopes for the game. Bo Nix, he's not the greatest quarterback. He's got some promise. He's got some, he's got a good arm, but obviously he's struggled this year. He was better last year, but he has struggled this year. But for the Broncos, it's the defense. So how do you think matchup wise the Eagles are gonna fare going into this game?
Yeah, so everything you said about them having a good defense is absolutely true, and I still feel really good about this game. You could call it maybe just like Red October blindness, that we're just so anxious and locked in for the Bills that maybe I'm taking it for granted, but the Broncos were the team that I felt like, compared to what I was kind of reading nationally before the season, that I just differed on from the consensus more than the most. I know some people saw them as a dark horse Super Bowl contender, thought they were really good. I don't know. I didn't see it. I mean, I feel like, their wins so far this year. I know they beat a terrible Titans team in week 1, and where I think that game was close for a little bit. And then they beat the Bengals without Joe Burrow. Obviously their losses have been, close games too. So we can twist that. A lot of ways, but yeah, they're coming off a short week on Monday night. West Coast team, kind of out of the altitude, playing a 1 p.m. game on the East Coast. To your point, I think if Vic can get giving up the big plays cleaned up, which I'm sure is an emphasis on film this week, I think Bo Nix is the type of quarterback. I think he's got 4 interceptions so far this year, where if you make him, drive like, 60, 70 yards methodically, at some point they will make a mistake or have a setback and all. So I feel, I think the Eagles are. I think the Eagles are going to win the game for whatever reason. I mean, this is a very dangerous way to live, but it feels like when they kind of have drama surrounding them, or almost like, going into the Steelers game last year where Brandon Graham almost created their own drama, that when they do that, they typically respond the following week. So to me, they've built up enough trust where, I trust them to go out and win the game on Sunday. And quite honestly, it's kind of crazy because all the games have been like one possession so far. I wouldn't be shocked if it's a 10-point win. I think the Eagles, or more, I think the Eagles defense matches up really well. And I think, I trust Vic, against the young quarterback I know Bo Nix isn't a rookie anymore, but I trust Vic to be able to, do a lot of things to confuse him there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, thank God we've got Vic Fangio. If it was any other defensive coordinator, I think I think there'd be a lot more concern this year. But the defense, they seem to have found they seem to be finding their identity a lot quicker than the Eagles are offensively. You know what I mean? Like last year, the Eagles found their identity a bit quicker than the defense did, and as after the bye week, it just all came together and they both started clicking. But obviously, this year I think the defense have been they've gelled a lot better. Obviously, the pass rush is the biggest concern for the Eagles, and giving up the big plays. If they can get those things fixed, if they can get 1 or 2 games of the pass rush, you can get to the quarterback, I think then they'll start to get on a roll. Then they'll find their momentum. But yeah, so as long as we got Vic Fangio, I think we can rest easy. Obviously, you shouldn't take any game for granted, but I'm glad that we've got Vic Fangio, and he was the head coach in Denver not too long ago. You know what I mean? So he's got experience with some of those players. You know what I mean? So we see how that all works out. But it's going to be a good game. It's going to be an exciting game, and I'm looking forward to that one as well. But obviously, the big thing is Red October. It's a big series for the Phillies this weekend. It's a gigantic matchup, but great pitching matchups, great lineups, and the Phillies, they've got to burn the boats. They've got to give everything they have to this one. There's no more excuses left to give for whatever happens. During this run now, they've just got to go out there and leave it all out on the table. So Drew, we've finished up there. Thanks again for joining me this week. I love having you on because you're such a great fountain of knowledge, and I love hearing your takes on baseball and football and stuff. It's great. And everyone, thanks for tuning in. Give us a like, a follow, subscribe, watch the show on YouTube, and listen on Apple Podcasts. Wish Drew a happy birthday. And Drew, if you do get to Philly tomorrow and manage to see Justin, give him a shout out, and everyone else, if you see Justin and Drew tomorrow, give him a holler, and go Birds and go Phillies. See you, everyone.
Justin will be way more popular than me. I'll be on the lookout for that orange Tennessee hat. No.
He ain't hard to miss. He won't be hard to find. But thanks everyone, and go Birds, go Phillies.